it's not, then it's 2. I think either
Brent, are we
way,
ready?
We're in compliance.
All right.
Off the top of my head.
Good afternoon.
Their numbers are- but don't quote me on that.
Welcome to this meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission, February 28th at 1:30 p.m. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Beginning the roll, myself as the secretary, Commissioner Dewey, present, Commissioner Hunter,
Present.
Commissioner Strange.
Present.
I understand Commissioner Stewart is absent.
That's correct.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Ellison,
Here.
Commissioner Stockdale,
Present.
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
and Commissioner Bryan.
Here. We have a quorum. Anything, Brent, are you going to report on meeting notices and that type of thing, or mail? Okay. All right, I had not heard of anything new anyway, had not seen anything posted to the website. So we'll skip over that matter at this point. The first matter on the agenda are the folks who are here for 42 Columbia. Are the applicants? Are they here? Would you object if we took you first?
Such a gift.
Well, you see, we're trying to minimize the amount of time we have to deal with that gentleman right there. And so if we put you first, we then can condense his presentation as much as possible.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's my lucky day.
Yes, sir.
Tim Willard for the applicant. I represent the Chases. There's several owners to this. It's in a trust. I walked in maybe a little late, or you haven't read the report or anything. This is on, let me just read kind of from your report, because it summarizes well the dimensions and everything. This is 42 Columbia. The property is zoned R1. There's the total square footage is 12,485 feet. So when it's split in half, it'll be 6,242, which exceeds your 5,000 square foot requirement. You can fit a 4,000 square foot rectangle in it. So it meets all your code, and otherwise I think it's pretty simple. It should be. I know this is the first step in your process. I just submitted the arbiter's report. All the buildings on it would be demolished. There are no setback issues or anything like that. I just stopped by there today before I got here. It looks like they might have to do some bamboo eradication. But other than that, it's probably a good thing this is coming down. So.
And there is a court order in effect, basically a partitioning order.
Yeah, and that whether that's relevant or not, I don't know. But I thought I'd send it to you to give you some background on this. Mm-hmm. I think I sent you the whole thing when I originally filed.
Yes.
So.
And Corey, do you have any thoughts as building inspector on this one? Any objections, any problems?
From what I've been able to tell, looking at it, no, other than just working with the arborist when they eventually go to put in their off-street parking and access to the property.
So they will comply with the tree ordinance down the road?
That's correct.
It does look like they're going to lose, that the demo alone will cause them to lose a healthy tree, according to the arborist report.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
And that would be something that I would defer to the arborist for.
Okay.
We do have the revised arborist report in, and one of those notes on there under the maintenance was that was recommended maintenance was to remove the 48-inch red oak, which was listed as tree 1.
Right,
The demolition of the house will cause severe damage.
right. So the tree itself is healthy, but the demolition, there's no way around that, I guess?
Without having received a demo application yet, I don't want to speak prematurely on that.
Okay.
But if it's usually involving demolition, if the house is placed where it is,
Yeah.
the demolition company will have to, they're kind of confined to where they can.
Yeah,
They can't work.
yeah, okay.
Did you all get the arborist report?
We did.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was
'Cause
posted
I didn't
the
see it on your package.
Right.
That one large tree is very close to the house.
Yeah.
Beautiful tree, but it's, I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
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 The only thing, we haven't gotten the demolition, or we just have to get the asbestos checked out. We haven't been able to get an inspector in there. It's kind of, this client's kind of like herding cats a little bit,
Yeah.
but we'll
So the check's in the mail?
I hope so. When do you schedule, if this moves forward, do you schedule it today?
It would be at our next meeting.
Yes, which is April 11th, actually.
Oh, great.
Friday, April 11th.
That's all I really have then.
I mean, I guess the only question I had, and maybe I just didn't get it from reading through the applications, is that this is not going back. It was always the 12,000 square foot lot, right? So this is not going back to its original configuration. This is a true partitioning into two lots, correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's why we're doing it in two hearings. If it were going back to its original, we could have done it in one, but it's because it's two that it takes two hearings.
Yeah, the old lines don't make sense, yeah.
Okay.
Any members of the Planning Commission have any questions? All right, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Anyone here from the public to speak to this application? It's at 42 Columbia Avenue. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing section of this particular matter and see you in April.
Thank you for taking me first. I hope you all aren't here too long. My weekend just started.
Good for you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next matter. I believe it's Coast Hotel.
That's correct. Give
Are
me
we going to
one.
do that before that we do hotel? Consolidation, okay.
We're doing Coast Hotel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you could give me 1 second. The good news is, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear that I don't have a big, long PowerPoint this time. So just bear with me while I get myself organized. For the record, while I'm doing this, I am Vince Robertson with Parkowski, Yerk, and Swayze, here on behalf of Rehoboth Hotel LLC, which is the property owner. I do have here with me today, just to introduce you all again, Craig Johnson in the front with North Star. He's the president of North Star, which is the general contractor for the project. Over here is Will Harvey. He's the owner's representative for the project. Brian Adams, not the singer, the architect, is here behind Craig. He's a principal with Alliance Architecture, and then Stephen Krumenacher, he's the professional engineer on this project with DCI Engineers, and he's a principal with that company. What you see on the screens is the hotel facade with the 10 additional rooms, additional space that we're looking to get site plan approval for. What I thought I would do, just give an overview. You all sent us a letter dated February 17th, and again, thank you for sending that, because that sort of helps focus things, and I think it gives a good exchange of information between us. We responded to that on February 26th, which was, I guess, 2 days ago at this point, and then we submitted the plans electronically. We also submitted paper plans yesterday, thanks to the United Parcel Service, taking a little longer than anticipated. But I understand from Chairman Bryan that you all don't have the paper plans yet. And then on top of that, Mr. Janis is not here, nor is Ann. So what we thought we would do to keep this conversation going is just sort of hit the high points generally in that letter in our responses, just so when you do look at the plans, you'll have some frame of reference for doing that. And one thing in that...
They have been submitted, the revised plans?
Yes,
Okay.
they were...
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but electronically and in paper, but I understand the paper ones went to Ann yesterday, and so she wasn't there, so I don't know where they physically, they're in this building someplace.
If I could, yes, I double-checked this morning. Yes, they did arrive yesterday, but they have to be processed by the city secretary, so.
Right, we understand.
Yeah.
I think you're just going to give basically a 10,000-foot overview.
That's exactly what I'm hoping to do, and, if you all have any questions, that's great, and we may reserve answers for those, but also this way, when you are looking at the plans, maybe, again, you have some context for, what you're looking at. I will say the plans haven't changed substantially from the first set. It really deals with a couple things that are called out in the letter regarding, for example, parking and ADA compliance and some other things. I'm not going to go in the same order in the letter because I think it makes a little more sense to kind of jump around. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the question about how this complies with the comp plan. And you'll recall from Mr. Janis's report with Wallace Montgomery, they talked about 11 different items in which the ways in which the plans complied with the comp plan or addressed issues in the comp plan, specifically goals in the comp plan. We sort of narrowed that down specifically to 4 goals, and they all dealt with renovations. You know, there's the desire to renovate commercial structures. It talks about appropriate redevelopment, creative redevelopment, and adaptive redevelopment. I will say, and that's what we've done, I thought the way that Wallace Montgomery and Mr. Janis characterizes it as a revitalization actually may be a better term under the comp plan, because this was and is a revitalization of an existing hotel property, as you know, the Sandcastle that was on this corner in Rehoboth. And that was the foundation for why we went to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment recognized this, that there was a lot of cost and expense involved in revitalizing this property, but also making it an appropriate redevelopment or creative redevelopment or adaptive redevelopment underneath the comp plan. And they recognized the expense of doing that, and of course granted the variance that allowed us to proceed with the 10 additional rooms. So the reasons, again, for the comp plan compliance are all in the letter, so you can see those. One thing I did want to show, so you don't have to take our word for it, the hotel actually was awarded by Hilton the 2023 conversion of the year. You know, and that shows, and that's a high bar to meet, because I think there's 120 some odd Tapestry hotels within the Hilton brand, and when this conversion was done, it was awarded the #1 conversion within that brand in the country of all their different hotels, and actually it's ranked #2 nationally in terms of within that brand in terms of customer satisfaction as well. So just something to show that, you know, from a third party within that industry, they've recognized that it was a successful conversion. The second item I wanted to talk about was parking, and we addressed this at some length. There was a question about whether, you know, the parking spots violate Delaware law, and that was the phrase used in the letter. It's our position they do not. You know, this is one of many steps that we've taken with the city. When we submitted the plans and they were reviewed by Mr. Janis, and I understand he's not here to comment on that, but you know, we looked at what we needed to do, and he determined before we went to the Board of Adjustment that we were good with everything but the FAR variance for the 10 rooms. When we got to the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Adjustment actually found that the additional 10 rooms are appropriate, which led to the FAR variance based upon the depictions that were entered into the record by the applicant, by us. I mean, we went through that whole hotel from top to bottom at the Board of Adjustment level, and they didn't find any other issues other than the FAR that we needed to address and that was approved, the variance. And then the combined building official Wallace Montgomery letter reiterated it further, and that's quoted in the letter. I'm not going to read it here. But it shows that, you know, we're good with the parking that's provided within the hotel for the additional hotel space. And I'd also point out that, you know, that's consistent, again, going back to the comp plan and the desire to have a revitalization of an existing property. You know, if you're going to redo an existing property, you know, you've got to live with what's legally non-conforming there to make it successful. So, again, we believe that we fully comply with the parking requirements. There was a question about the compliance with the American Disabilities Act and the proposed parking, specifically with regard to the ADA. And we looked at that. One of the things, you know, similar to parking generally, is that we're dealing with a legally non-conforming concrete and steel parking structure that exists. And when you look at the IUBC, you know, it promotes compliance with the ADA unless there's technical infeasibility. And here, because of everything that we're dealing with within an existing building, there's technical infeasibility that, or it's technically infeasible in terms of retrofitting it for ADA parking spaces. However, we understand that there's a concern that you all have about parking and ADA parking specifically. So what we've done is added one parking space that is ADA compliant. And I should say, keep in mind, and I'm going to get to this in a second, this was a hotel that had no ADA compliance before it was renovated. I mean, there was zero there. There was no ADA parking spaces and nothing else was compliant. And I'll just show you real quick so that you know when you're looking at the plans. Actually, yeah, there we go. The ADA space is over here, and it's actually in a good spot because it's right next to the stairs and the entrance to the hotel itself. That's an existing parking space where there was sufficient room. And this is on, if you want to jot this down for when you look at it, it's on sheet A211 of the plans. And it shows that there's the new striping for the ADA compliance, the handicap accessible parking space near the stairs and the entrance into the hotel itself, so that somebody who needs to utilize that space has the ability to do so.
There are other ADA spaces though, right? Not just this one?
No, that's the only one at this point, because there's none now. And so to make this work, that's the one we're adding. So.
Federal law would require 3.
Well, it doesn't on a renovation of a structure. That's where that technically infeasible language comes
Well,
in.
but it's
Well,
not infeasible. You may just have to have fewer spaces. But it's not infeasible technically. Physically, it's not infeasible.
Well, I would submit that it is because we have all those spaces. They currently exist,
I don't
as
think
legally non
I don't think that makes it physically infeasible.
Well, let me ask maybe a slightly different question, but on that point. So in your letter, you said, with respect to section 305.6, you said a facility that is altered shall comply unless it's technically infeasible, and concluded that it's technically infeasible. Is one of your assumptions that there will be these 72 spaces when you're deciding whether it's technically infeasible? In other words, if you were going to have 66 spaces or 68 spaces, would it then no longer be technically infeasible to have ADA compliant spaces?
What I'm saying is that we have 73 spaces that drives the 10 additional rooms that were approved by the Board of Adjustment. And so under that whole scenario, yes, because of the structure of the parking garage, the way everything's laid out, the columns and everything else, it's technically infeasible. The other thing is we run into issues structurally with it, again, because of the cards were dealt with regard to the structure. There's columns in there, there's bearing walls, et cetera, et cetera. So that it's not just striping of spaces, it's just structural issues we're dealing with as well.
I don't think you don't have to move the columns or change the structure. You just have to change the spaces.
If you were to reduce your room count by 1 or 2 rooms, that would reduce the number of spaces you needed to have, which in turn could give you room to make some of those existing remaining spaces ADA compliant. Is that correct?
I'm not going to say that's correct because we've been approved for 10 by the Board of Adjustment.
Well, but that's not my
ADA
question.
spaces didn't come up in that discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's our position that, again, right now, and we'll go back and look at this, because I don't want to have a back and forth, necessarily want to go back and look at the law, but, that it's technically infeasible at this point.
Please, Mike.
Yeah, there's 2 things, and this isn't the first time this has happened with the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment has no legal authority whatsoever to abrogate federal law, period. And in fact, the approval that you got did exactly that. So that's not your fault. That's the Board of Adjustment's fault. You were given bad guidance. The guidance that was done by the city's building inspector and the consultant is always considered preliminary when it's something that requires review by the Planning Commission. So the observations that they made were also preliminary and not final. They can't abrogate federal law. And it turns out, and I don't design, how you design your building is up to you. However, as a physical matter, you can in fact accommodate ADA fully and legally with the spaces with a modification of the spaces that you have without making any structural changes. And in fact, you can do it just by striping it differently. And under 236-403F, Article 1, that's exactly what you can do because the cost of doing that doesn't approach essentially the 20% limit. So I would just, that's strictly advisory.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at that. And candidly, that was a consideration we had, and I appreciate the feedback about restriping it, or at least looking at the geometry of it. Because one of the questions we had was whether if we restriped it, then you would say, well, the spaces are different and we lose our nonconformity. But I think, I think we can go in and look at the geometry of it and see if we can make that work.
Right. One of the things, and again, I'm not here to design your building.
Right.
But one of the aspects of the federal law is that if you can do it within that cost constraint, which obviously in this case it's very easy to do, it doesn't require anything, and that represents reasonable accommodation. And that's the key element here. Does it meet exactly what you would do if you built this building from scratch? No.
Right.
But it's a much more reasonable accommodation for the path of travel. So if we were to look at this again, and I'm just by way of example, if you came in and redesigned it to achieve that, then you've achieved that, you've met the spirit of the federal law, and now you're in full compliance with that particular element.
Yeah. And I appreciate that feedback, and that's actually helpful to us to hear some of that guidance, because we weren't sure, exactly what approach to take with that.
Yeah, it's non-trivial, that's for sure.
Will Harvey with the ownership. To maybe sort of flush out some of this, we initially looked at it from a purely non-conformity standard, but we heard your concern. Then we looked at it from a standard of trying to meet the requirement for the 10 rooms, of which we have one ADA compliant room being constructed, which meant we would put the one space with that one room for the new construction was kind of where our thought process was. But if you guys are saying we really need to go back and look and try to get to 3, and maybe that suffices the issue, we can definitely look at that.
Right, because how should I say this? You have a totality of a place of accommodation. And from the federal standpoint and from our standpoint, it's a totality. It's within the limits of this hotel. A lot of the hotel was done, as was pointed out by Vince, and I agree with him, it was done before the changes to our code with regard explicitly to the size of the parking spaces. However, the ADA component of this was in effect previously, and the Board of Adjustment can't change federal law, which is what they attempted to do by either ignorance or arrogance. It's not for me to judge. I don't know what the hell their thinking was. However, it gave you bad guidance. I don't know how else to describe that.
Well, I think perhaps, I don't think the Board of Adjustment was looking at this issue. And I mean, they're looking at a different issue, but, I think you and your client, as much as anyone, wants to make sure that you're okay under the ADA, because if you're not, and you build it and you get sued, you're going to end up with much bigger problems. And we've talked about how there's ongoing litigation throughout Sussex County right now on various ADA compliance issues. So I would suggest, I think this body will look at it more. I think the building inspector is planning to look at it more. And you all might even want to consider having an ADA, consultant expert look at it for your own good.
Well,
so we can all look at it.
Yeah, and between our engineer and architect, and some others on our team who aren't here today, we've looked at it. But again, it was sort of, this is helpful to know the feedback from you all, because there were 2 competing things here with the nonconformity and the ADA, and it sounds like we can address both of them the same way. So, and that's helpful. So, we'll come back to you after looking at that. So the next one, moving on, is just ADA generally. We talked about the one room that's ADA among the 10. There's 4 others that are currently ADA within.
I thought
Yeah,
they were.
there's
I thought they
5
were.
total.
All the more reason for those spaces.
Yeah, well, and so there's 5 total, and again, thinking that there was none when this hotel was built. The elevators themselves comply. Obviously, we can't, totally reconstruct elevator towers within an existing building, but they exceed the requirements for, I guess they're bigger than the requirements for size. The control panels were lowered for ADA compliance. The public toilets were made accessible. I think one of you all had a question about that in the restaurant, the public space downstairs. Those are all ADA bathrooms now. The dining room's completely ADA accessible as required. The pool, which was never ADA compliant, is now ADA accessible. So again, there was a lot of expense that was put into this hotel to make it much better than it was, not just visually, but also, there's a safety component in terms of the ADA compliance. Which leads me to my next topic, which is the safety issues. One of the things that you'll see in your plans, and I'm just going to go to the first one because this is the life safety plan. It's A101 if you want to jot that down. Mr. Adams, who prepares the architect who prepared the documents, showed the dead end corridor length. He showed the common passive egress travel, and he also showed the exit travel distances. Again, all within the required tolerances on that. And you can see, and you'll see these on your plans better. For example, the second floor is the new areas are outlined with dashed lines. And when you look at those plans, you'll see all the measurements that are included on those plans to show compliance with that. Same thing with the first floor and elsewhere. So we're all well within those dimensional requirements. The other question was, excuse me, about the propane tanks. We did some investigation on that with the propane provider and also the codes that govern location of propane tanks. And based on that, we've been advised by the propane provider that we're good. It looks like we are by code, but we recognize and we understand that you all would make this approval contingent on this. It has to be looked at by the state fire marshal regardless. So they're going to have the final say to make sure we're code compliant and safe with regard to those propane tanks, and we fully understand that. Which then brings me to the first item of the letter, but the last one that I wanted to talk about was that location of the bar on the pool floor, although it's interior, it's right next to the pool deck. We outlined a little bit more the reasons why this is different from a restaurant. It's a hotel, not a restaurant. Restaurants are permitted and regulated completely differently from hotels in the city of Rehoboth. I think I used this term last time. There's really two different silos within the code. Restaurants have the permanent compliance process, and it governs the business of a restaurant or dinner theater. It doesn't govern hotel structures. And the definition of hotels by the language in the code allow things other than restaurants to be used, such as club rooms, public banquet halls, ballrooms, meeting rooms, and public spaces generally. So the code really calls out and carves out two different pathways for these types of commercial uses, and we're in compliant with the hotel pathway, and we can have that bar area. Now, in hindsight, and we sort of talked about this as a group, perhaps we labeled it in a way that adds issues. First of all, it is a bar area. I mean, physically, there's going to be that there. But it's not a public area. As I mentioned in the letter, it's only for guests of the hotel, so you have to have key cards to get up there. But perhaps it could have been labeled as one of those terms that's within the city's definition. For example, a club room, like you would see adjacent to a pool at a yacht club or a country club or something like that. It's a small one, but there's no dimensional requirements. And I would say we went and reached out to the Delaware Alcoholic Beverage Control Commissioner. There are 5 hotels that have hotel liquor licenses within the city of Rehoboth, and they all operate under the code consistently with what we're proposing here.
Do any of them have bar space, separate
They
bar?
do. If you go on their websites, for example, and I don't want to put it out here publicly. I don't have a problem sharing it with the attorneys, but all 5 of them are fully occupied with meeting rooms, banquet rooms. I mean, think of the things that you've probably all been to at some of these bigger hotels where there's bar service. I mean, you can go to their websites and see it. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I don't think I'm doing that because they're in compliance with what I just described with those 2 silos under the code. So, that a hotel's treated differently from a restaurant in the city of Rehoboth. So, again, I'll after this, I'll share it with Mr. Lawson and Lisa, so that I forgot your last name. Hatfield. Yeah, sorry, with Ms. Hatfield as well. Just what we located in terms of, because I can show the spreadsheet we got from the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commissioner, and then also the information that's out there in terms of that's public in terms of the hotels in the city. So,
Do I want to add something before I go into my?
No, I mean, it's an ongoing discussion. It's definitely
Definitely a bit of a gray area. We still side on the need for a variance, but we're certainly willing to look at what Mr. Robertson's going to provide.
Well, in my mind, first of all, I take your point about the meeting space and the service of alcohol, but whatever the Alcohol Beverage Commission does doesn't have anything to do with our code or what we do here. So those are completely separate things. And you're right that the code does carve out those other meeting spaces, and maybe there's alcohol served in those meeting spaces. The code is also very specific about not defining a use of a specific bar area. That is just, it's just not, there is no use for a freestanding bar, whether it's inside a hotel or not. The bar types that are included in the code there are specific code provisions for each bar type and for every place serving alcohol. It's either based on the percentage of the restaurant space or it's based on the total square footage. It has to be enclosed. There's various provisions. And I'll just say that, of course, I've been to many hotels that have had bars, and I would be in support of having code language that allows for that. But we don't have that today. And, we clearly need code provisions that would provide all those parameters that do not exist today. So I don't see how we could just let one go on the fly when no one else does, has a bar such as the one you plan. I don't know how we can do that based on the fact that it's not currently permitted in the code. And I thought it was interesting that despite the absence of a freestanding bar in the hotel, you've yet won awards. So clearly it's not holding you back.
Well, no, I mean, there is one that's within the restaurant space.
Right, and exactly, because that's what the code calls for.
Well, yeah, so a couple things with that. I disagree with the code because, and again, you don't have to take my word for it. I will show you photographs of 4 other hotels within the city that have exactly what we're talking about, And I'm super concerned that somebody's got a wedding scheduled, and then suddenly the city's going to say, wait a minute, that's not permitted by code.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that perhaps there should be some revisions to the code. Because here's the other thing. I mean, what we're talking about in the other 4 hotels are upscale hotels. I mean, I think that's what the city wants. And there's an expectation within an upscale hotel that you have these sorts of amenities. In our case, I mean, it's practical as much as anything. Just like the other 4 where you can have a drink in your room or in the hallways or on the pool deck, here, what this is designed to do is be a service area so that people don't in their wet bathing suits have to go all the way downstairs into the, hopefully you've eaten there in Sirocco, it's an upscale restaurant, traipse in there, get their orange crush or whatever, and then go back all wet upstairs in the elevators to the pool. And it's not something that's going to be manned constantly. So it's an amenity just like the other types of amenities that are permitted that aren't manned constantly in hotels under the code. So I agree in principle that we should make this clear. I disagree that it specifically requires a code change because I think we're allowed to do this and the proof's in the pudding that others have as well.
We've said no to other applicants on this, and the plans have been changed as a result. So there's a fairness issue too. I mean, it's been interpreted this way. The code, the spirit of the code is no, freestanding bars. That's just the spirit of the code right now. It may be outdated, but that's the code. I guess the other loose end, the other piece of it that's not covered is there's no provision for a permit of compliance for this space you're talking about. And the spirit of the code certainly expects that any place alcohol is served, there's a permit of compliance process.
See, I disagree with that because the permit of compliance process says the business of a restaurant or dinner theater. It doesn't say the business of a restaurant or dinner theater or hotel. So if it's absent from that code revision, you do not need one.
Then it's not permitted if it's absent from that code.
No, I disagree with that. I think you just don't need a permit of compliance for it.
What?
Can I ask a question perhaps to help short circuit this? Have you thought about getting a variance?
We've talked about it. I mean, our first line of approach to this is that the code permits and we don't need one. But if that's the case, because there's enough gray area here just to clean it up, what we would like is that just assuming for the sake of argument that you all are good with it, the whole thing, that you approve it like you've done before, conditioned on getting a variance for that area. That's all.
All right.
So.
What you mentioned in your response, only guests with key cards will have access. Can you just explain that a little bit more?
So it's on the 3rd floor, and so that's the same as all the other hotel floors. And to get in the elevator or the stairwells, you need to have a key card just for security as much as anything else. So or there's an event where, you know, people are allowed up there. But it's, the purpose of that, it's not open all the time to the public to come off the street and go up. I mean, if that's the case. You know.
Can a member of the public walk up and buy a drink?
Up in the restaurant now, yes. Upstairs, no, you couldn't. I mean, just like a member of the public couldn't go up and use the pool.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
about the bar up on the third floor.
Right.
So they could not.
They could not, no.
Okay.
I will say that there have been other times when code changes have come about as a result of variances gone. When the restaurant ordinance was done in 2016, the reason it was done is because restaurants were continually going to the Board of Adjustment saying, we need more space. So they changed the ordinance so that instead of being a maximum space, there's a maximum space for seated dining and the rest of it is open. If going to the Board of Adjustment means that the city will finally make some code changes, you know, then everybody wins. It's more of a timing issue than anything else. But I just don't think we have the authority to.
And I guess, you know, the permanent compliance, you know, and I saw some folks shaking their heads like, you know, well, that doesn't make any sense. But the disconnect then is, you know, you could, and we know this happens in Rehoboth. We've got club rooms. We've got public banquet halls where food and beverages are served. You know, I mean, we've all been to those events and weddings and whatever else. None of those have gone through the permanent compliance process because they're not associated with a restaurant. You know, they're part of a hotel. So I'm just saying that's what's happened. You know, and I don't want to say that they were overlooked. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying that that's been the path that's been followed because it's that separate silo.
Well, I
under
don't know when
code.
the permit of compliance process went in. It may be a grandfathering thing. There is one hotel, I won't name it, but
I can tell you that most of these aren't grandfathered. I mean, they're not old enough to be. So
well, I remember doing a permit of compliance for a hotel with a restaurant, and doing it for the hotel within the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why some are overlooked and some aren't.
I don't want to
that's
throw
not an issue
shade
for
on
me.
any hotel operations, and I don't want to mess up anybody's wedding, you know, in the next 2 months either. But
Well, it sounds like you have some issues to talk about among your group.
Yeah.
And to come back to us, hopefully.
and I'll share some information offline
Yeah,
about the
yeah, I'd be
hotels,
curious
you know,
to know.
with
Can I
city.
ask a factual question? And maybe the answer is obvious to everybody other than me. But we've all been to events, I agree. Weddings, special events, receptions, retirements, whatever, where in a meeting space, call it a banquet room, call it whatever, where it is from a set time on a set date, and the hotel sets up bar arrangements and food, or whatever the sponsors of that event order, and it takes place during that period of time, and then they take it all down and it goes away. What I'm confused about or not clear about is what you all are proposing in light of what the other hotels do. Do the other hotels that you're mentioning, not by name, have standalone bars that are functioning presumably while the pool is open, which presumably is from some time in the morning until sometime in the evening, all day long, serving drinks all day long? That's a very different scenario than the wedding reception that's on a specific date at a specific time where everything is set up for that and then taken down.
I'll reserve on that to show you what we have. I'll leave it at that. You'd probably be surprised. So, yeah.
See, I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but it seems that's a yes or no question.
I'll tell you, yes, there's plenty that are like that. Yeah. Well, not plenty. I mean, there's 4 other ones that exist. I don't, you know.
That have a separate bar functioning on a regular basis throughout the day.
Well,
that
I don't
is
know the
separate
hours,
from
but
the
it's a
restaurant.
bar, you know. There's bars that are out there, and there's service that's
A
occurring.
permanent bar.
Yeah, I mean, that's occurring on a regular basis throughout the hotel premises, you know, in the spa section, for example, where people are drinking mimosas on a daily basis, you know.
Okay, well, that's, I say it was a factual question.
Yeah, no. No, and it's a fair question, so I understand. So we'll exchange that information, and, you know, one way or another, I think we'll get through it, and to the extent that we can be partners with the city and getting that code changed, because the bottom line is really, I mean, is you can see it with this project, the renovation of it and the upscale nature of this hotel, but I would say if we want to attract hotels to Rehoboth that are going to be upscale, we need to get this cleared up, you know, so, because it sounds like it may be a question now, but, you know, to get future investment in the city, we need to get it resolved.
I thought it might be a test case.
I thought it was easier just to call it a club room, and then we'd all say, okay, fine, and we're out. So,
I do appreciate the research you did with the others. I was wondering that very thing last week and figuring I didn't have time to
Yeah.
research it, but so we appreciate having
yeah.
that.
And I'll go back and look. We have photographs. We have some stuff we've pulled off of, websites for the others, and we'll look for other examples as well. And maybe, probably between now and then, we'll double check. I don't. To your question, I know what I've seen with my eyeballs, and I know the pictures, but we'll go back and verify that as well, just to make sure that, that it's accurate. So, yeah.
All right, sir.
All right.
Yes, Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, I want to return to the question of dead-end corridors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that, and I'm looking specifically at the third floor plan, which is where this bar is, and I assume therefore that the door from the corridor into that space is a key card situation. Is that correct?
I'm going to ask. I don't think that's the threshold for the key card because that's down below. Yeah, if you want to come up.
I believe the answer to that question is no, because it would be key card access on the first floor to prevent non-patrons of the hotel from accessing any level above where it would be rooms or amenities dedicated to only guests.
But you do show a door from the corridor into the bar.
Yes.
And that will be closed and locked at times?
Yes. It'll be, it should be similar to how our pool door is where, a guest, normal egress door. Guests of the hotel could walk out that door, walk out onto the pool patio and use that as a way to come and go from the deck.
Well, are there times when it actually will be locked?
Yeah, maybe Craig can answer more. I don't believe.
Because this has to do with the length of the dead-end corridor.
There we go. That's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about that door. Mm-hmm.
So functionally, I think that's yet to be determined. Yeah, sorry. So from a functional standpoint, I think the operations of that are to be determined, but if it's necessary to be one way or the other, I'm sure we can accommodate that.
Well, if it's not available for emergency egress on a 24/7 basis, then you have a situation where
No, it absolutely would be.
the most southern western room has a dead-end corridor of something approaching, and I could only, since I didn't have the full plans, but it approaches 70 feet, which is a lot more than the 50.
I understand your question now. So, to get to that space, it's a secure access to get into that point. So exiting into that hallway is not a secure entry point. So it would be an emergency egress door for anyone to use.
Is the key card access is to get on the elevator, right?
Right. So once you're in that space, you're secured. So getting into those hallways is not a control point.
But trying to exit in an emergency from the most southern western room, you're going to go right past that door, and you have basically a 70-foot route to get to the staircase to get you down to safety. That's my point.
That was intended to be what you.
Yeah, I'm not following exactly the route you're describing, so.
That wasn't, the intention of that door was that it would be a second means of egress out. So it would either have to be on an emergency release, or it could also be controlled with the fire alarm, that if the fire alarm went off, that it would release it. So it could be a control door 24/7 at most times, but in case of emergency, the fire alarm could deactivate it where it could be, because it would be marked as an emergency exit.
All right, yeah, it has to be very clear to anyone who, in an emergency.
Right. There would be a sign over that one that's an exit, and then also going further down to the stair would be the second means of egress. For that.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll keep watching for this.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone
I mean, there
else?
was a lot of time spent on those corridors and those doors up there just to make sure that it's right too, just in the design phase. So I don't think I have anything else, unless you all do. One thing I did want to point out is, we mentioned this at the Board of Adjustment. The team that you see here, this isn't the only hotel they've ever done. They've done the Hyatt in Dewey Beach. There's a Hyatt Place that you might be familiar with in Lewis, and then they have other hotel properties in Maryland and upstate Delaware and some other places as well. So as evidenced by that award they got, they understand what it takes to design a hotel that works, what the guest expectations are, and how to operate one as well. So just wanted to get that point across.
Yes, Mr. Strange.
Can I ask a couple of more mundane questions, if I may? Two things. With regard to, and you alluded to this, I think, at the first meeting, and there was some documentation on this, with regard to an agreement with the city with regard to the trash dumpster, that you have access to it, as opposed to the previous, and you're increasing the room count, and the city uses the same dumpster. Does that create any problems? Because you're now having a rather significant increase.
I'm not aware that the city uses that same dumpster, but we have a recorded license agreement with the city. Actually, Sandcastle did, and then the city commissioners approved the transfer of that license to Rehoboth Hotel LLC. But one of the things we did do, the ownership group installed a trash compaction system as part of that dumpster, so that before, trash trucks were coming virtually every day for the hotel and the restaurant and all the other uses that were downstairs. Now it'll be once or twice a week, so there's a lot less travel, trash truck travel.
Okay, even with the increase in the room count that you're
Yeah, that's right.
anticipating.
Okay. That was something that they really, it's helpful that they have businesses and trash companies as well, so they know how dumpsters work and trash trucks work and compactors work and the sizing and everything else. So, yeah, that's a non-issue.
The other question I have, again, goes back to parking, but not related to the ADA requirements. And you alluded to last time that you had more parking spaces than actual rooms in the original hotel.
Yes.
Okay. And that with the new construction, you were applying the old spaces to, forgetting ADA at the moment, not talking about that. These are regular spaces. And the regular spaces that were applied to this new construct, you said were still valid because the facility was grandfathered.
Which is the same as what the city said, but right, yeah, right.
Well,
That was our position, yeah.
And again, we go back to, the original guidance from the building inspector is just that, initial guidance and not final guidance, for good reason. And I raised this as an issue because I was conflicted on this. When you increased the FAR for this new structure, that structure did not exist in the old building. You had to have an increase in FAR to get the new building that you wanted, which therefore has to be built to all the standards related to something new. And under 270-49 for structural alterations and repairs, that part of the code strictly relates to things that already pre-existed, not the things that are new. So when you have a new building, or in this case, a new structure, even though it's on a grandfathered entity, because you had to get a new FAR calculation to get the new capability, NEW, new, everything is new. So the parking spaces which are required as a function of the 10 rooms you're building, forgetting ADA, they have to meet the new standard of what a parking space is as opposed to the old standard. And once again, it's not my job to design your facility. It looks like you can come close to doing that, but you may not be able to get a full 10 rooms, which they may have to be some other function that may be valuable to the hotel, but it may not in fact qualify as a room unless, once again, you have to go back for a variance.
What I'm hearing, and we'll take back with us, is that if we can take a look at, restriping that existing parking lot for the ADA and also look at those spaces, we'll take a look at that and get that back to you.
Right. And what's interesting is you may end up in the non-ADA spaces, you may have some number of spaces that in fact have a column that infringes a little bit. But now, depending on the totality of it, now you're back into, again, if you're looking for a variance for other things, that may be wrapped into it, or in fact, you may be able to accommodate all of it. So it's a delicate balance between room count, ADA, and new spaces for new rooms.
Yeah, we'll do that exercise for certain.
And, oh, I had one question, and I may have missed this in the paperwork. When was the original sandcastle built?
Oh, shoot, I knew that at one point. Yeah. I think it's even older than that. Yeah, we can confirm that. Because we have the plans and everything, I just don't have them with me to give you the exact date.
Right. And just as a general question, because it's one of the things that it's just mechanical. When the new ownership took place and the observations were made that, when you requested the variance, you said, if we had known it was this bad, we never would have bought the damn thing. Well, that's moral hazard. I'm not going to get into that. But my question relates to, with the extent of the renovations that were about to take place, that normally would have come to us, but apparently it wasn't perceived as being that great. But then during that process, whenever it happened, someone discovered, oh my gosh, the physical structure was in danger of falling down, essentially. Is that, I'm looking there because I'm seeing a
That's
shed aching.
actually true. We actually, because the Board of Adjustment wanted to know that in detail, so we provided, and it's embedded in the city's records on the Board of Adjustment hearing, but we can provide it again if you'd like. But the structural engineering studies prior to purchase, I think they did mechanical, electrical, and plumbing studies. I forget. When you see, the issue was all the time they were doing that is it was a going concern. There was restaurants and a hotel there, so they couldn't go back behind existing walls.
Right.
And when they did the renovation, it was bad, and we've got the photographs to show that. And it's not even a close call. It was really bad.
Okay. The reason I asked
And the
that-
board, I will say the board wanted to know that because the variance was predicated in large part on compliance with the comp plan and the unexpected costs that they ran into. So,
Right, because one of the things, that's why I was asking about the date of when was it built, because that would in turn have led to issues. There was a high probability then within that structure, and I was going to ask if those changes were made as well, that there might have been, or there was asbestos, lead in the piping joints, there may have been brass joints. There's a whole series of things which are now, you cannot do at all.
Yeah.
And I didn't know.
Well, a lot of that was done, Craig, because he was the man on this. So.
So the hotel structure itself that was built in early 80s, which was a post-tension concrete structure,
Right.
was separate from the part that we had the major problem with. There was two smaller retail sections that were built at a different time. Not sure what time that was. But it was built out of steel stud and bar joist and metal deck construction with just a gypsum sheathing. Those were the parts that were just kind of eaten from within, that were the kind of the bar area of the, what was the name of that? The Conch Island towards the city buildings, that section. That was the part that was just deteriorated and gone. The hotel, the concrete structure itself of the hotel was fine. So it was two separate building processes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things, it's kind of interesting, you go back as far as like when it was Tijuana Taxi and some of the other buildings that were there. I think there was even, if I remember, in a laundromat, they were out front were literally 3-step separate structures that the prior owner had essentially just wrapped and made them the front part of his hotel that he built from scratch in the back. They were old, and you can see that on the plans, the old yellow plans that the city has, which I don't know that it's here nor there for this. We can certainly share those with you just for sake of interest.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? Okay, well, today was just an update from you, as I recollect, and see you in April.
Absolutely. And thanks again, because this is informative again. And just the more we can get direction on how to sort of narrow and focus the issues and sort them out, I think that helps everybody. So
Well, we very
appreciate it.
much appreciate your cooperative attitude.
What I heard is the city is in possession of the full-size drawings. We just don't know where they are somewhere in space.
No, we know where they are. They just haven't been processed yet.
Okay.
The process is that the city plans go into the city secretary. She processes them and distributes them to the planning commission.
Okay.
So Ann is in here, so that step was not able to take place.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Yes, sir. Quick question.
I know I'm filling in for Matt today. Lots of process here with this one, but there's just one burning question that I've had sitting here. Is this building sprinklered or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's throughout, yeah. I wanted to say yes, and I thought it was.
Thank you.
But I just want to make sure, yeah, it is.
Better be.
Yeah, I was going to say, phew.
All right.
1980.
Relief.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
I believe you're here for the next matter,
I am.
which is a lot consolidation for One
Give me
Rehoboth.
1 second.
Thank you to your team for presenting today.
All right. So I am still Vince Robertson with the law firm.
I'm going to ask you if you were still.
Right? Oops. What happened? There we go. I'll do this one. Oops, that's not the right one. Give me a second. I'm technologically challenged. Keeps jumping to that. Okay. This isn't really a security alert. Uh-oh. There we go. This isn't any real big PowerPoint. This is just a lot consolidation for the One Rehoboth Avenue project, which you all have seen now multiple times. I think everybody almost knows it by heart at this point. And thanks again for granting the preliminary site plan approval on it. What we're doing, we submitted the lot consolidation application. By way of a little bit of background, there was a deed recorded that by verbiage consolidated the lots into one. But at your request, which I understand, we need to get a survey, well, a lot consolidation plan approved so that that can get recorded with the county so that everybody's maps line up. And so what this does is, let me back up. There's a question in Mr. Janice's report about whether there were 3 or 4 properties. This is actually his Exhibit A. And by deed, there's only 3, and I'll just run through those real quick. And you've probably seen my February 11th letter that goes through all the deeds in the chain. There's this property, which is where Core Brothers is. There's this property, which is where Dolly's is, and Zelke's, and back here's the old bowling alley. And then there's, by deed, since the 1950s, there's this property, which was the Dentino store, which is now Grotto's, and then the Sirocco Hotel back here. I'm not going to run through that chain of title, but in 1957, lots 21, 22, and half of lot 2 were all consolidated into one single ownership as one single property. I will say the only thing I can figure, and this is just pure speculation on my part, is that at some point just within the city, probably decades ago, because there was a hotel on one property and a store on the other, and even a miniature golf out front, but that for some reason they just created 2 accounts within this city, because that's like accounting numbers. When I know the city provided this, 5208 is sort of their parcel accounting number, and 5209 was their other. I don't think any of that matters because it's the same land area that we're talking about. But the one thing that will get cleaned up with this lot consolidation plan is that my clients, One Rehoboth Avenue, only own 1/2 of Lot 2. That's not in dispute. You'll see on the city's map, it shows that all of Lot 2 is owned by One Rehoboth. We are not claiming any ownership of the Admiral in Baltimore. I'm sure the Moores would appreciate hearing that, and obviously there's not even any dispute there. But when you see the survey, it shows, and you'll remember this from when we went through the site plan process, it sticks out behind Louis back over here and then comes back in next to the Admiral in Baltimore. So that survey is 100% accurate. By getting the city stamp on this and then the county stamp and then recorded, that will fix that issue once and for all so that the county mapping will be corrected as well as the city mapping. So that's sort of one bit of cleanup that will occur here. The other thing is, this takes what is, 3 properties, including Core Brothers, which doesn't comply in any way, shape, or form with regard to the code because it's such a tiny, skinny property, and makes it a fully legally compliant property under the zoning code. So there's not a whole lot more to it. I think hopefully this is the last step in the process with One Rehoboth Avenue LLC to get this lot consolidation approved.
Will this clean up the mapping in both the county and the city records?
Yes, it will. So what will happen is, in terms of the nuts and bolts of this aspect of it, if you all approve the lot consolidation plan, what we need to do is bring the paper copies of that plan up to the city, to Mary Ellen and Matt and Corey. They have a stamp the city puts on that, and they sign it and date it, say it's approved. Then we have to take it to the county to get it stamped by county planning and zoning that says it's not in their jurisdiction, because the recorder of deeds needs both of those stamps to accept the survey. Then we record it. Then what we do is get it back to the city, Mary Ellen and Matt and Corey or whomever, to confirm that it has been recorded with the book and page and everything else. And on the city side, that should change the city's mapping. Then on the county side, that survey goes to the county's GIS department, and they'll fix that mapping there. And it turns out I have some connections with the county, so I'll make sure that happens as well. So.
Does anyone have any questions? Any of the members of the commission? Is anyone here from the public to speak to this matter? For purposes of preparing our notice of decision, Mr. Larson has a few questions for you.
Okay, and first I'll note that the chair waived the preliminary hearing
That's
and went
correct.
straight to public hearing for this matter pursuant to the code. Applicants paid the $1,600 fee.
We did. And I have a copy of that check, should you need to see it, so, yeah.
And then the consolidated lot has at least 50 feet of frontage on a street.
That's correct.
It has at least 5,000 square feet.
Yes.
And there's a fully contained rectangle of at least 4,000 square feet with its shortest side measuring 48 feet
Yes.
or more. All right. And this does not create any additional nonconformities, right?
No, it actually fixes some nonconformities, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Have the fees been paid, Corey? Mary Ellen?
Yes, to Ann, the city secretary, you process them, yes.
What'd you just say?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Do I have a motion in this matter?
I move approval of the lot consolidation as shown on the diagrams and surveys presented.
Yes, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Go ahead and have a roll call vote, please, just for the record.
Initiating a roll call vote for the motion regarding the consolidation of these lots. Beginning with myself, Commissioner Dewey, I vote in favor. Commissioner Strange?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner Stewart is absent. Commissioner Davis?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner Ellison?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner Stockdale?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner Gay?
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter? I vote yes. And Commissioner Bryan?
I vote yes, so the motion passes. In great deal because of your brevity, Mr. Roberts. It is Friday afternoon.
One of these times, though, I'm going to come up here and keep it real short, and then I'm going to be ambushed.
Short today.
I've seen that movie before, I don't want to repeat it. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment with
Yes, sir.
regard to Vince? I meant we were joking about it.
Yes, sir.
But with this property and other properties that you've presented, although we may disagree on several issues, it's always done with a level of integrity and respect that I think it would be nice if other parties that came before us did the same thing. So you're to be congratulated for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say sometimes we all make mistakes, but I'm never going to withhold information or take a position that I don't agree with. And, we can disagree, but I'm not going to give you something that's not based on some legal argument or factual, so.
And also with good humor.
I've, like you all, I've been through enough of these meetings. You got to have a little humor in this. It's be boring otherwise.
Right.
So, We can all agree on that, probably.
Well, thank you, sir. That was a fabulous presentation.
You're welcome. Everybody have a good weekend.
Look forward to seeing that new hotel. When are you starting?
So, I mean, so an update on that, I mean, well, on Coast, as soon as we get a site plan approval.
Not that one. Talking about One Rehoboth.
No, and now this is not set in stone. This is just my understanding because now it's sort of past me. But I know they're going to be talking to the building and licensing team and staff first about demolishing the Sirocco, because they want to get in there. And I know, Core Brothers folks are here. Potentially relocating them and getting in there because they need to do utility locates, and also there's going to be a lot of time and energy spent looking at making sure everything's shored up on the perimeters for the other properties as well. So, but the first is probably going to be the Sirocco because it needs to almost come down regardless of all of this. So look for that hopefully this spring. So that we can get that down before the summer. There won't be any construction, obviously, this summer, and we're still going to be going through all the construction plan reviews and agency reviews in the meantime. So that's now probably, hopefully, excuse me, construction next fall. So, yeah. Yep.
I may have been remiss. I thought I asked for any public comment.
You did.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
On One Rehoboth, but I'm not sure we did.
Then
on
I
the
stand
others.
corrected. I was right.
Yeah. And I don't know, well, I don't know that we need it on the preliminary review because
Right.
that's not a public hearing.
Right.
Yeah, but you definitely did on One Rehoboth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Next matter today.
Report.
Yes, Building and Licensing Department report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applications, first item on my report is applications in the pipeline. We have 104 Scarborough, the minor subdivision for 104 Scarborough. That application was received on December 12th. I reported on that last meeting. And that application is complete, and that is in the queue, next up in the queue for review. So we'll be starting that report.
So that would be a preliminary hearing for that one?
Yes, ma'am, for
In April?
For April,
The
yes.
report will be ready for April?
Yes.
Okay.
And the next one here, again, this is in no particular order here. The revisions to the Bellhaven Hotel, we received revisions on January 10th. And this is moving forward as a revision to the currently approved site plan. So that, we're not sure whether that one will make the April 12th, but we'll certainly keep you apprised of that. Certainly the agenda item we just heard previous to the lot consolidation, the revisions to the Coast Hotel, we'll be looking and submitting a new report on that per the third revision that we received on 2/26/25. We're looking at that. There are a couple of applications that we're waiting to hear back on. The first one is, as I reported last time, is 228 Rehoboth site plan. We haven't heard back from the applicant on that. The Beachview Motel, they were originally going to go to the BOA in February. They withdrew their application, and they are revising their plans. I had a conversation with the applicant's representative probably about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, a bit. Somewhere between last meeting and this meeting.
Any sense of why? Or-
They indicated that they wanted to do some, kind of change direction a little bit. Not totally change direction, but they were rethinking some of their plans. So they wanted to take some time and do that. So we'll be in I encourage them to communicate with us what they would like to do so we can be of assistance to them. Atlantic Crown, that was a preliminary hearing to you all on December 6th, and we're still waiting on revised plans from them. Canal Side Inn, we understand that they are seeking to go to the BOA.
Oh, okay.
But haven't received anything yet on that. Although the city secretary did indicate before she went out sick that she did receive a couple of BOA applications, but I don't know what they are. I will be having a meeting next week when she's better to review those applications. That brings me to the Oceanside subdivision. I want to give a brief update and then hand it over to Secretary Dewey to fill in the, to continue this discussion presentation. This application was received on October 24th, 24, and per the code, this application was forwarded to Secretary Dewey for review. And Secretary Dewey submitted comments to the applicant via Bill Larson on December 6th. And Vice Chair Gray had sent me a copy of these comments on December 19th, 2024. The applicant reached out to me on January 16th, indicating that they hadn't heard anything yet. So I had, since I had those comments already from Vice Chair Gray, I forwarded those comments to them. Secretary Dewey reached out to the city manager on January 29th, following past practice to engage city staff in review of application materials, and proposed that he work directly with myself and applicable city staff to schedule meetings to conduct these initial reviews. Indicated that was a fabulous idea. And we reached out directly to Secretary Dewey that day to set up an initial meeting. And we had a meeting on February 6th, and we talked about some comments, and now I'm going to hand that over to you, Secretary Dewey, to take it from there.
Well, and first, thank you for reestablishing the timeline. That
sure.
helps fix things in my mind yet again.
We all have a lot going on.
Ah, good heavens. But in any event, there was, from my point of view, a very productive planning meeting with basically everybody who would have a hand in this in the department. And I came away from that meeting, and I hope others felt the same, that there was a clear order of business.
Yes, we did.
In order to examine these plans. The next step is we have a meeting currently scheduled for, if my recollection is right, March 5th.
Yes.
And we will look at where we are and then talk about where we go next.
Mm-hmm.
I have had the opportunity to review the written comments provided by the department. I was somewhat relieved because I thought it would be like giant, and it's not. So I think we're going to be able to get through the March 5th meeting relatively quickly. In my point of view, and you and I can have a planning discussion prior to the meeting,
Sure.
what I would like to come away with at the end of that is, what does the next report to the developer look like? What are key elements that we need the developer to focus on? What are the make or break items that have to be addressed in order for this to move to the next stage?
Absolutely. I'm definitely on the same page on that. Yep.
All right.
We're referring to this as the Oceanside Reserve, is that correct?
That's what I have written down, Oceanside.
I mean,
I said Oceanside subdivision, but it might be Oceanside Reserve. Is that?
Oceanside Reserve is-
Okay.
And it is a major subdivision, which is
Major
why
subdivision.
there's a
Yes.
different procedure for this particular
Yes. That's the
application.
procedure.
Is there any indication whatsoever as to what ballpark you think this may eventually see the light of day for us?
I don't have that ballpark, and I don't mean to step on, and please add additional information. And because what has been submitted so far is unlikely to be seen by the Planning Commission, I will describe this only in the most general terms. In fairness to the developer, the application as originally put forward was de minimis.
Okay, that's sufficient.
And there is much background work that the developer will need to complete, including much background research regarding deeds, easements, not only regarding easements with private property owners, but utilities. It's a lot.
Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
All right, anything else, Ms. Gray?
Yes, two more things. Actually, three. Plans committed currently under review. I mentioned Coast Hotel. Then we'll be bringing back the 42 Columbia lot partition for public hearing, and we just did the lot consolidation. Status of approved plans, the 413, 415, and 417 Rehoboth Triad. Building applications were received December 10th, 13th, and 20th respectively. At the last meeting, I reported that city staff has been working with the applicant on getting infrastructure to the site, and that has been completed. So now we're currently looking at the building permits is under review. Two more things. The mixed-use zoning ordinance task force, that is a mouthful to say, had a first meeting yesterday. I thought it was well attended, first of all, and I thought, and Vice Chair Gay, you can chime in. I thought there was good engagement and discussion. There was general agreement on the proposed approach. Staff and Wallace Montgomery will be following up on some to-dos from the meeting that the participants had asked us to do to present at the next meeting, as well as to start the discussion on the co-tenants. We'll be sending out a doodle poll by Monday to set the next meeting date, because there was a couple, we throw out a couple of dates and people are like, I can't make this, I can't make that. We're like, let's just do a doodle poll. And the last, I was going to hand it over to Corey Shinko to do a report on the lot consolidation and partitions. And he's been spearheading this effort and doing a fabulous job. And so he'll be giving a report, an update, as well as to let you know kind of the process that we've been the scope of work and the process that we've been putting together and following. Corey.
Thank you for having me here today. It's the first time being in front of you all. So I was tasked with looking at all of the lot partitions and consolidations that occurred in 2024. You should have this list, or we'll have it very soon. And what this list contains is the existing or the old addresses that they came in with under their applications. And then if the conditions, if there were any, have been met for the lot consolidation or separation, as well as if any conditions of approval had been met for the Board of Adjustments if they had a BOA case prior to coming to you, as well as new service location addresses, those lots that are contained within that service address. I wanted to make a general list, so this may have information that you don't need or you don't want, but this is for you as well as our utility billing and other departments. Which ones have water and sewer services? The new county tax map numbers assigned by Sussex GIS are the city's parcel numbers that have been assigned now, as well as if they've been updated in Munis, our software system, and then if they've been sent to the tax assessor. A brief overview is all of them have, with the exception of one, which was the old church that was demolished last year on the corner of Bayard and Norfolk. That the final plat has been, and it's attached, all the final plats are attached with these, just so you have everything in one place. It has been included, but we're still working the addressing out with Sussex County. We've got a meeting with Megan Nebris and her team on Monday next week, so that we can discuss an SOP for steps forward. After the applicants get approved from you, they can meet with us and go over exactly what they need to do as far as getting these final plats stamped by both city and county, then getting them to you within that 90-day window per your code, per 23610F, and then getting the addressing down. I've been in talks with Chief Banks and got an updated list for his dispatch so we can get the 911 addressing out. And so our hope is to have an SOP to share with you as well, so what we plan on doing on this side once it's been approved. And that way you have a tracking system and you can be notified once everything's done and completed between the city, the county, the addressing, utility and billing, and the tax assessors associated with it.
Mapping as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so moving forward now, when we send the addressing memo out to all parties, it'll have the addressing memo, the recorded final plat, as well as a snippet, if I may, or a screenshot of the newly created tax map parcel numbers in Sussex GIS, so that they mirror each other.
Good. Any
So
questions?
we'll be getting that report?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, this has all of them with all the final plats attached. And like I said, all of them have been completed with the exception of 801 Bayard, which is being under review right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be sending it to Ann to post in the same spot we'll be posting the director's report.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about 413, 417. Now let me try to remember what it was. You talked about it's being reviewed for building permits.
Yes.
Do we know if the conditions of approval, and I don't know off the top of my head what they were, but I assume there were some, have they been met?
Either. Since I'm not conducting the building permit review, I cannot say.
Okay.
But I'm confident that they will be met. And I don't remember what those conditions are either.
Okay.
So we will pull up those conditions and,
Okay.
yeah, take a look
Is
at
the
them.
permit likely to be issued before our next meeting?
Possibly.
Okay.
And I say that possibly, it just
Timing, yeah.
if there's any back and forth, any revisions that need to be made.
Right.
That's always a holdup with permit review.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else? All right, the next matter on our agenda is an executive session for strategies involving legal advice or opinion from the commission's attorney pursuant to 29 Delaware Code, Section 10004B4. Is there a motion to go into an executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. All those opposed? All right, we are in an executive session in
Going next door, right?
the executive session room.
Brandon, are you staying?
just concluded a closed session, and I'm looking for, it's 10:05 here today. I'm looking for a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is there a discussion? Call the roll.
Can't we just do a voice vote?
We'll just do it, okay.
Let's do a voice vote.
Voice vote, okay. Sorry.
Can we do a voice vote?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Just making you earn your pay. All those in favor of going back into open session?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are back in open session. We're adjourned.
I move.
Adopted by acclamation.